Welcome to the Endurance Drive podcast.
Our mission is to share the key principles that structure our approach to endurance training and coaching.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Katie.
Katie, we've kicked off the year. How you doing over there?
I'm good. I feel like we went from 0 to 100 really fast, and that's the way I like to do things in general, so I'd say it's been pretty good.
January 6th was a Monday, and it just felt like Christmas for triathletes. And I don't know about you, but I had calls almost for 12 hours that day. And it's funny, people came out of the woodwork on that Sunday before, even the Monday, that same Monday. So I think I doubled my calls in that day as well, too. People were psyched, and it was just really fun actually to reconnect with a lot of our athletes, our community. And yeah, I'm just pumped.
Yeah, I am too. And it's funny. People often ask, like, well, what does your life look like as a coach day to day? It's like we just sit on Zoom and we sit in TrainingPeaks, and that's basically all it is. It's a little bit less movement than you might think. Occasionally we'll coach stuff here and there, but it's a lot of Zoom. So we're definitely getting our money's worth on the Zoom membership. And I expect that to continue now that our athletes are busy and absolutely crushing it.
Yeah, it's just here we go, right? Here we go. And today we're going to do it a little bit different. Although we've done sort of this in the past, we're sort of going to use a few of these episodes like a training journal, I guess, if you will. Like what are we learning? Like we do training and coaching insights as a preamble, if you will, to a main content. But I think you and I have talked about this, that we'll probably have a lot of just like insights this year that we'll probably just do some episodes that are just training insights, sort of a training journal, like what we're learning, because we have lots of athletes. And it's just nice that we sort of capture, I think, this sort of zeitgeist of what's happening. And it seems like every season, every period, every month sort of has unique challenges, and sort of there's these universal things that are happening for everybody in this period of time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is just a moment to shout out to the athletes for giving us all this content. It really is just coming in these Zoom calls. It's coming in TrainingPeaks comments. It's stuff that's happening to our athletes. And something else I wanted to point out is that if you're one of our athletes and you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, am I getting called out? The answer is no. There's 6 other people like you who asked the exact same question or did the exact same thing. We were never calling out one specific person. So don't worry about it. And all questions are good questions. So please keep them coming. And we are learning too. So I think that's a great place to kick it off.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned that, because the other day I thought, what percentage, if I were to put a percentage on, say you have like 5 athlete calls, and probably 75% of the points are I feel like are overlapping. It's almost like we're having the same conversation. And there's unique perspectives from everybody, but I feel like probably 75% we've already covered with just in general with other folks. So everybody's unique, or your plans are unique, you are unique, but there is these universal themes. So I hope we capture them, and I hope these kind of episodes are helpful for our community.
Yeah, totally. And that's also why we started the podcast, is because this stuff comes up all the time. And now we get to tell even the people we aren't coaching. So with that, I guess I can kick us off with something that's come up with a lot of my new athletes. Folks who I've been with for a long time kind of know the drill on this already. But a really common question that we get is, why are the workouts not programmed such that they would sync to my Garmin? So if you download a plan on TrainingPeaks, for example, often there will be these programmed paces in there, and like you press some button and something happens, and then Garmin screams at you, it's time to go 10-minute miles, now it's time to go 8-minute miles, et cetera, et cetera. And this is something that we've never really done. We haven't programmed these workouts directly in TrainingPeaks, not for swim, not for bike, not for run. We actually have an episode where we talked about this way back in the season called Good Data and Bad Data last year, but I wanted to take a minute just to explain a little bit the logic behind that. It's not necessarily that we're being lazy. We probably don't want to go back in and change our entire library right now. But the much broader point behind this is that we as coaches really want you to develop a good feel for your work intervals and your recovery intervals, and the flexibility to be aware of your surroundings and adapt as you're doing that. So let's say you go out for a run and you're going to do a 4-mile run with 6 by 20-second pickups or something. If you're told to do a pickup right in the middle of a busy intersection, that's probably not the smartest thing to do. And at the extremes, we can imagine people just running into traffic and doing all these crazy things just because Garmin said that they were supposed to. And maybe that's not you. Maybe you're aware of your surroundings. But even so, we also want you to be able to say, hey, maybe I'm going to take this interval. I'm just going to do 15 seconds because I'm about to hit a really steep hill and it makes more sense to stop right here. And here's a nice long downhill. I might do this one for 25 seconds. And your paces also are going to differ kind of day to day on these field-based workouts, where our cue to you is not, hey, do this at exactly a 7:30 mile. Our cue is, hey, run at like rate of perceived exertion 8 to 9 for 20-ish seconds, smooth, strong, etc. So with all those things in mind, it's just really important to get a feel for your body and be thinking about the intention of the workout always. One other thing I'll add here too is people say, well, I can't always remember the run workout if it's not synced to my Garmin. We try very intentionally to create run workouts that are never so complicated that you can't just remember them off the top of your head. The only workouts that do get a little bit complicated are Zwift workouts, which these do kind of press and play. We do that on Zwift, and then we'll talk about TrainingPeaks Virtual a little bit later. And then swim workouts, we have a hack that I will bring up later about how to remember your swim workout when you're on the pool deck. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But broader question is, we are not going to be programming these workouts anytime soon. If you really feel like you need to do it, you can do that on your end. But that is our reason why.
Yeah, great reason why. We always say you're not a robot, you're a person. So to be a person out there. And I tried this. I've actually, programmed, in these pickups before that, or 10 by 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, on a flat road in a place that I'm very familiar with. And it turns out I never can stick to it because, again, like a car comes by, you run into the snowbank, you do this, there's a hill, whatever it is. Like I could see maybe doing this on a track if you really know what you're doing. But otherwise, it drives me crazy. And I always get off by the second or third interval. I'm like, my timing is way off. Although I did learn something this week from our friend Noah, which is that you can hit a button and you can program your own rest intervals based upon like a lap button. So there is a way to have it to tell you, okay, you can run 20 seconds and it'll beep and then beep again or something. But then you can hit a button and it'll allow you to have as much rest as you want. And you can hit the button again for your next interval. So I think there is some flexibility in there, but generally we're not going to go back and program all these things because yes, be a human out there, know the intention of the workout, listen to your body, be aware of your surroundings, and have a little fun out there too. Because sometimes, like you say, 15 seconds, you might want to do 30 seconds because you feel awesome, and that's okay too. So, the plan, we always say, is the map. It's not the territory.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm sorry to anyone who that disappoints. I'm just putting that out there, but hard line from us as coaches. We're really hard line coaches on that.
Yeah, a lot of the Training Peaks annual plans or plans you can buy for $20, $100. They come with all these things programmed. They come programmed for the swim. They come programmed for the run. They come programmed obviously for the bike. And I look at these things and go, oh my gosh, I would go crazy. I wouldn't know what to do, and especially in the pool. I mean, my God, the pool would just be an insanity to try to do this.
Yeah, well, what if you get a lane buddy? Like, what if someone starts talking to you and then it's like, nope, beep, you gotta go. Like all this stuff, it makes it fun and makes it enjoyable.
Well, we're
So,
triathletes. We have to spend half our time talking at the pool. So
I know it's a very social experience in its
right.
in its best form. Exactly. Okay, so next thing that's come up a little bit, this is a question I've got a few times that I think opens up a really good conversation where people will ask if I say, hey, stay underneath your zone 2 kind of ceiling heart rate, for example, you want to stay in that zone 2. Is it better to like go as close as you can to that point, or do you want to go lower in the zone? So let's say your zone 2 heart rate is like 130 to 150, for example. Should you go out and do a 149 average run or a 135 average run? And this has come up recently because I think a lot of people often when they hear some type of ceiling, their goal is to get as close as possible to it. You might think about that with pace. But our philosophy on zone 2 heart rate is it's actually often better to go lower in the zone if you can. And the reason for that is because when we're doing zone 2, the goal is to build mitochondria. We've talked about that a whole lot before. That's the powerhouse of the cell. You want more and more and more mitochondria in order to be better at this kind of just going all day pace. And you do that if you're at the top of your zone 2, and you do that if you're at the bottom of zone 2, I believe at just about the same rate. Like as long as you're in those bounds in terms of lactate, you're doing about the same thing. And the reason why you don't necessarily want to go to the top is at the top, there is more impact on your body. So it's a little bit more of that like steady run feeling. It's a little bit harder. There's a little bit more output associated for the exact same benefit. And so for that reason, I just tell people, hey, if the intention today is to build mitochondria, why don't you just do it the easy way? Don't make it as hard on yourself. And the second reason is that very few of our athletes kind of go out and do lab testing to know exactly where their zones are. And my concern, if you always go to the top, is that you might sort of be stepping over it a little bit. You might be near it. If you go lower, you're not going to be anywhere near that crossover point. And when we talk about crossover, we're talking about the point where you kind of cross your lactate threshold, you start burning more carbs and fat, et cetera. So our goal is to kind of stay away from that as much as possible. So unless you know your exact number, it's nice to stay a little bit lower. And I'll note, actually, I've been having this experience recently. I've been doing some good run training. I'm in a little bit of a run block. I was going out for some of my easy runs, and I was noticing like, I'm a little bit towards the top of zone 2 in these runs. And the runs were kind of wiping me out in a way that an easy long run necessarily shouldn't have. And so then I said, okay, what if I just take 20 seconds off the pace for this, like a 20 seconds per mile slower? I went out and I felt amazing. It was night and day difference, even though I actually know I was in zone 2 based on my lactate values both times. So just try it out, see how you feel. If you're getting wiped by long zone 2 training, it might just be that you're too high in the zone 2 or that you're not feeling enough. Those are kind of the two biggest explanations. But we always say lower is better when you can because you're just getting those same adaptations.
Yeah, there's so much to say in this one because, at the end, we always say, volume really does drive, the performance, which is when we say volume, we really mean like, can you go out and just do a lot of work and build that mitochondria, right? So, and I think also too, like if you're looking at a run workout and you're saying, okay, yeah, my top is, 150, I'm going to go to 150. It's a little bit like looking through a keyhole because what we're trying to do as coaches, we're trying to say, look at the bigger picture because yeah, you may have the ability to go higher in that zone for that run, but you also may have a bike or a swim that same day as well too. And again, you're just stacking these things every day, every day, every day. And so we're just looking for, they're not exercise snacks, but they're just like, you should go out and do something. You should feel like, yeah, I did something, but it didn't kill me. They're not wiped out because I got another one coming. And then tomorrow I got two more coming. And the day after that, I got two more coming. So we're just stacking these bricks over and over again. And yeah, and there's nothing wrong with like going sometimes to the top of your zone and being excited. If you feel great, then do that. You should always do that and push yourself a little bit. But in general, just what I say, stay lower, get the same amount of patience, and you'll just feel better. And I think part of this too is like this builds into a little bit of one of my points, which was that, it's New Year's. There's all this talk about like, we got to have goals, we got to have this, we got to have that. And there's a little bit of shame and guilt and self punishment going on. I sort of think we sort of feel that way a little bit with society, but it's really not a long term strategy. So going high in your zone, I don't feel is a long term strategy. What we're really trying to do here is we're just trying to build these friction free habits and these schedules that just enable this long term change and transformation. And easy zone tuned is one of the greatest ways to do that because you feel like it's okay to get out the door. Like I know when I start pushing myself, I start to not dread, but I'm like, oh, I have to go for my run. Oh, do I want to go for my run? I start putting it off. I start walking around the house. I start doing the things, and I realize, wait a minute, what if I just went out the door and just went really easy? And something I've done recently is it's been really really cold. I've said, okay, what if I go out and I try not to even sweat. I bundle up and I go for like a 3 mile run, really simple. And like my goal is not to sweat. And so that's going to put me really in a low zone. So again, sort of gets me out the door. And once I get going, yeah, maybe I want to do some pickups, but again, go along the zone. It's got magic across the board.
Yeah, I love this so much. And I'll say too, often if you're going in with the mindset of like, okay, it's going to be sort of top of zone two without like that little bit steady zone, I find that there can be a lot more nervousness and anxiety around the workout than if you just say, I'm trying to go chill, like I'm trying to go super easy. And just like I was talking about before, for me, that little mindset shift of like, okay, what if I just went 20 seconds per mile slower? It was night and day how I felt about those runs. I was like, oh, this is totally fine. Like, this is going to be great. This is not a big deal at all. So I don't think that there's necessarily something different happening on the lactate level. And this is again like maybe more theory than fact, but I think there is something happening on the more psychological level. And we want to tap into that however we can, because what we say last time is gentle January. Like there's no stress allowed in January from these workouts. Right. So if you're getting like workout anxiety, just take it easier. And then that'll hopefully help with a lot of what this looks like.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. I've got another thing that's come up. This was actually something that I came across. We talk a lot about Gordo Byrne. He has some really good content. He has a Substack related to endurance sports. He's been kind of a big player in the space for a long time. And he had a really interesting framework for thinking about when you're ready to try an Ironman. And this came up because yet another question I've gotten from a handful of athletes recently, many of which are signed up for 70.3s this year, is like, when can you then bridge into the Ironman? Or should I be thinking about an Ironman for next year? Because often these signups are pretty far out. So maybe they're doing a 70.3 this fall and they're thinking about an Ironman for even the year after that. And we've talked about a couple different frameworks in terms of our levels, level 1 through 5 for getting ready for an Ironman. But I really liked how Gordo thought about it because it had a very easy way to check boxes and just ask yourself, reality check, are you ready for the Ironman? So he says you're ready to do an Ironman when, number 1, you're able to swim relaxed freestyle and you've completed swim workouts up to 4,000 meters in duration. So that's really long. And if you are on any of our 70.3 plans, unless you're an advanced athlete, you probably have not seen a 4,000-yard workout. So if Ironman is on your radar, let us know because we can throw some of those 4,000-yard sets in. You can see how that feels. That is a big stimulus. 4,000 yards is a lot of time in the pool. So that's the first one. Second one, I love this. He says, you've completed running races at 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, half marathon distances. You don't need to have completed a marathon, but you do need to have been injury-free for the last 12 months and have been running 3 to 4 times weekly. And this checks out. I hadn't done a marathon. Actually, I've never done a standalone marathon before, but I had never done a marathon before doing an Ironman. But I'd done the 5K, the 10K, the half marathon, and I demonstrated sort of the durability in order to sustain running volume. I think often people who are really injury prone will struggle with Ironman training. Again, there are ways that we can sort of use different modalities and reverse engineer the run. But at the end of the day, I think if you are someone who wants to build the durability you need to do an Ironman, think about 12 months of no injuries. Again, like a little niggle here and there is okay. Oh, you had shin splints, you needed new shoes, you got them, etc. But if you're persistently like, I have really bad like runner's knee or stress fractures or whatever it is, like SI stuff, plantar fasciitis, any of these things that's sidelining you for months at a time, probably not the best time to try the Ironman. Number 3, you've completed triathlon events ranging from sprint distance to 70.3 distance. Love this one. Don't make an Ironman your very first race. We have a whole episode on that actually is one of our most popular episodes on the podcast. So you want to do an Ironman, so we'll link that. And then finally, you've ridden a number of century rides, 100 miles or more. That's also something you could think about for if you're doing a 70.3 now and you're sort of angling for an Ironman in the future. Make your fall all about getting some big bike rides in. Late summer, fall, you can get on your bike, do a charity ride that's 100 miles, go out for 100 miles with your friends. But you need to know what it's like to be in the saddle for that long if you really want to sign up for one of these 112-mile bike rides. And so if you can check all these boxes, I think you're in pretty good shape. But I would encourage everyone to think about that and think about long-term planning. Think about 2-3 years out on that horizon if you haven't done these things just yet.
Yeah, I love this one. As we know, we're huge Gordo fans here, and he's one of the OGs. He wrote a book called Going Long, and to this day, it's still one of the best books, and probably I think that's really the only book I really think on good long distance. And he also, like you say, he has a Substack. We have a link in here, so if you are interested in long distance type training, him, and we also refer to actually Alan Cousins a lot, and Alan Gordo used to work a lot, so they're part of the whole Boulder cartel. But I really love his last point about the 100 miles because a lot of times people don't have context for maybe like the 4,000-yard swim and the injury-free. I think people kind of brush that off. But then when you ask somebody, I find that when you ask somebody, hey, how many 100-mile rides have you done? And that one really stops people short. They're like, and they're like, none? And like, okay. So actually I have an athlete this year she's a level 1 athlete. She came to me actually and said, hey, I love the level 1 thing. I'm in my second year. I want to blossom as a level 1 athlete. So this was great. She's using the right terminology. And then, so one of her goal this year is to do some sprints in Olympics and towards the fall, do a century ride just to get exposure because she wants to do a half Ironman at some point. But she says, I really thought it'd be really cool to do a century ride. And I thought, that's awesome. What a cool project. We can work on all this level 1 stuff and then we can do a century ride. And when we say a century ride, I said, listen, it's going to be something like, you're going to plan a route. You're going to maybe go for 2 hours, stop, have a burrito, have some coffee, whatever it is. And then you're going to ride another 25 miles and you're going to stop and do something else. So you're going to plan out maybe 3 stops, but we're going to get you there and you don't have to do it all at one time. But at the end of the day, we'll have ridden 100 miles. And that's just going to really inform that athlete of what it's like to be in the saddle for, 6, 7, 8 hours that day.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think those century rides, they can be really fun, and you don't have to bridge straight into like 100 miles TT bike head down gels only. For example, I think many of our Dartmouth athletes, and myself included, actually, my first 100-mile ride was this charity ride called the Proudy that they have up in the Upper Valley. And the Proudy is essentially a rolling buffet where they just feed you every 5 miles or every 10 miles, and you just roll through, and it's all these groups, and you can ride, like there are people that ride on a mountain bike, there are people that ride on a TT bike, it is whatever it is. And it still gave me a really good feel for it is hard to be in the saddle for 7 hours. Like that is a very challenging thing to do, but it's not the same as saying, how do I just go out my door and ride 100 miles? So look for stuff like that. That is not the only charity ride that is out there. Do it with your friends. But that will also tell you if you love biking enough to really sign up for what the Ironman entails, because we will tell you part of an Ironman training plan is going to be 5 or 6 100+ mile rides in an ideal setting. So you have to make a century ride feel like just another day. And so if you try it out now and you absolutely hate it, then that's probably a good sign that you might want to err towards the shorter distances.
Right. Another great one too is they sign up for a Grand Fondo. Those are sort of similar like the Proudy, right? They go out and they feed you, and there's all kinds. There's different themes for these Grand Fondo. So that's a great way also to get exposure to that longer day. So like you say, it doesn't have to be, torture for that first one. You do a bunch of them where you just with friends and you're just like, let's go to various coffee shops. So let's go here, let's go there, let's go to this bakery, and then you'll get a feel for it.
Awesome. Okay, next question that has come up many, many times and comes up anytime I have a new athlete ever. Does workout ordering matter? So there's two things to think about here. Number one, does it matter if I have my swim on a Tuesday or a Wednesday? Can I swap my swim, run, etc.? And within a day, does it matter if I do like the swim with strength or the swim with the run? And should I do the run first or the swim first? There's a lot of questions that come up after I initially dump stuff into Training Peaks. So I'll say that at a high level, at this stage where we're just base building, workout ordering doesn't matter that much. So we've talked about Scrabble tiles. Workouts are like Scrabble tiles. You move them around where they best meet your life schedule. There's very few ordering rules that we follow. A couple that do come up is, if you shift, for example, all your runs, let's say you have 3 runs in a week and you shift them to be back to back to back. Sometimes that can be a little bit more run volume than we want back to back. So you could separate them out a little bit. But in general, we know how hard it is to fit all this stuff in. So if it's a lot easier for you to lift after you go to the pool because you're already there, you should totally do that. Or if you like run to your pool, there's lots of different ways to do that. Another thing to think about is in terms of ordering your doubles, I've often talked about this like big rock, little rock analogy. So think in your week, what are the big rocks? So the workouts that really need to demand your full energy, your full attention. You want to be physically and mentally dialed for those. I usually plan to do those first. So for example, I have some athletes that are doing like an FTP test in the next couple weeks, or they're doing a run test just to set their zones. That is a big rock. That is sort of an intense experience. I would not do that at the end of the day after already having done your tech swim and after already, for example, worked for the entire day if you can avoid it. So just think about like having the energy to go in with that big rock stuff. And if I think about my life right now, I'm still finishing up like a strength block. So I have 2 days where strength is my big rock. I have it first kind of if I can. I usually do like one run workout a week. So I'll make that a big rock. And then I do like a maybe long run on the weekend because I'm focusing on this run block right now. That's 4 big rocks. And those are going to take priority in the week. Everything else is sort of like scrabble it in wherever it fits because Zwift is pretty easy to do and the tech swims are pretty easy to do. And as I transition into a bike block coming up, then those bike workouts are going to be the big rock and they need to happen first. Maybe strength will be second in the day, etc. So there's lots of different ways to think about it. And pretty quickly, you're going to find that your week is kind of filled up with what you need to do. But we've talked about before, sit down on a Sunday, reverse plan, figure out what makes the most sense. And of course, just ask us if you need us to kind of once over once you've moved things around. We're happy to do that as coaches. But we just want this to integrate within your life. As always, you're a person first, and we don't want ordering to be anything that stresses you out.
Yeah, this is great. And I love the big rock, little rock. And the other variable I put in here is weather. So I'll look ahead in the week 'cause I do have some flexibility in my days. And so I'll look and say, okay, there's a weather window this day. I'm going to go for a big ride this day, or it's going to be super cold this day. So I know on that day, even though maybe my run isn't my quote big rock, it is kind of my big rock in the sense of like, it's hard to get outside when it's -10 outside. So I say, okay, that's my big rock because of the weather, because of the challenges. I know if I can get out, and then I can reward myself later by being inside either, I was going to say at the pool, but I don't go to the pool yet. But on Zwift, but it's just warmer, or a strength session that's going to be inside. So I try to work it around the weather a little bit because it's been, as we all know, it's been a little bit tough. It's been a real winter this year. So shout out to everybody out there who's getting outside. A lot of people actually, it snowed this weekend. A lot of people got out and ran around outside, and it's tough conditions out there.
Yeah, this segues into another insight that I didn't write down, but I will add it to our outline. I'm actually just getting back from a week in California. Luckily not where the fires are in California, and we're absolutely thinking of everyone who's dealing with that in Southern California. But I was up near Stanford where I have some work stuff, and I just want to tell people I have seen the other side. Training is a lot easier when it's not this cold. It was so crazy to me to just experience like, wow, I'm just running in shorts and a t-shirt and there's no restriction and I feel amazing. Just know that like this will happen to us eventually on the East Coast. I had forgotten how good that felt. So definitely not trying to brag here, but I do want to say there is something to it and it will happen. And something else I noticed that, Jim, we've definitely talked about before is the fact that stacking volume when it's really cold out is really hard. Like a 12-hour training week in January is probably the equivalent of like an 18-hour training week in June, for example, when you can stack all that volume outside. And I was trying to think about the conversion of like thinking about the efficiency of a trainer workout. You're under tension the entire time. I think it's almost like a 2-to-3 ratio or something where like 40 minutes on the trainer is equal to 60 minutes outside, or maybe it's even like 30-to-60 just because it is such a big stimulus and you're having fun when you're outside, you're coasting, all of that. So just think about the fact that it might not be on the calendar the same amount of hours that you were doing at your peak last year, but you are actually getting incredible efficient training. And so don't get too caught up in things like the total TSS, the total hours, because it's a very different stimulus to be inside than outside. And we will have time for those 6-hour rides and all that stuff, maybe in like 4 months.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned this because I just thought the same thing because I went into November and I think I told you, actually, I had a very specific CTL goal that I said I was going to do, and I was on target. I was like, yeah, this is great because November wasn't too bad in terms of weather. And then December came along. And then when January was like, oh, okay, now it's winter. And I saw those training hours plummet. And just, it's really hard for me, particularly to sit on the trainer for a long period of time and get the same TSS. So, but I'm here to tell you that I rode outside yesterday. Maybe you felt this way, Katie, in California with your rides. Is that so? I've been limiting myself to 1 hour on Zwift, and I haven't even been doing all that hard stuff on Zwift. Just been doing some Zone 2 stuff, mostly tempo stuff, but really short 1 minute stuff. Went outside yesterday and felt phenomenal on the hills, and it was the trainer power. And I can't even say I've done a big block on the trainer, but it just reminded me once again that how efficient and how effective the trainer is. And most of my TSSs are like 45 to 55 on the trainer, 1 hour. And you look at that and you think, oh, that's not that much. But what happens within that 40 to 55 is so concentrated that I find it every single year. I'm surprised every single year, like, oh, a little goes a long ways on the trainer. And I think every year I'm like, I don't trust the process. And then I went yesterday, I was like, oh my God, I feel phenomenal. And the power was just there. And it was like, oh, this is great. And I can easily ride 20, 30, 40 watts higher on average outside than I can inside. And so anyway, have faith. It is really working, even if you're just doing 45 minutes, even 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour on the trainer, and you're not getting big hours or big TSS. Don't worry about it. It is happening.
Yeah, I love that. It's sort of like we're tapping into this minimum effective dose, and it might be less than you think on the trainer. In the past, I think we've always been sort of like, well, you got to stack that bike volume, but you can stack it later. Like right now, just build the leg strength and really build that familiarity with being under tension for so long, and it will have huge, huge benefits later. And this translates really nicely into my next question. A lot of athletes have asked me like, hey, can I stack volume onto my zone 2 runs, rides, swims, etc. if I have time? And I would say in general, yes, this is okay. But I do always ask the athlete, like, okay, why do we want to do this? Because at the end of the day, you are getting a lot of good training in, and it's going to be a really, really long season. So I always am just aware that, if I give you an hour ride on Zwift and you're like, oh, but I want to do 3 hours, I'm kind of like, well, where do we build to? And are you going to burn out by the time we get there? Because there will be a time where we are doing those like 3-4 hour rides. If it's March, April, there's a chance that the weather's not good and you are stuck inside. So I just tell people, I know that there's so much enthusiasm right now. And again, it's great to continue building the base, but there is a limit to that. So I usually say like, probably don't stack on more than 30 to 45 minutes on the bike. Run volume, you have to be very, very wary of. So don't put more than 20 or so minutes on the run. And then if you want to add a 500, 1,000 yards in the swim, that's okay. But don't go too crazy right now because it's going to be a really, really long season. And this is right back to that enthusiasm point that I talked about before. Don't come out of the gates too hot.
Yeah, there's I think dry January. Now we're saying easy January.
Gentle January.
Gentle January. Yes, I really think because that was one of my points. Because people come out, yeah, they're all pumped up, like let's go, and I give them a 3 mile run. They're like, wait, what's this? I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, don't worry. Like, there's so much going on, especially with the run, because we all know runs. There's a lot of liabilities there. It's very corrosive, and it just takes a while for your body to get your muscles, your tendons. All this kind of stuff is going on inside us that maybe we don't understand, but we know that if you go easy, like again, back to our low in zone 2 and go gentle in January and even February, you'll build up that base and then we'll be able just to scale up from there. So love the enthusiasm, but yeah, also we have to be super careful.
Yeah, and one other thing I have told some of these athletes is like, hey, if you really do have all the time in the world, use it on stuff like, hey, you can do a lot more rolling. You can get a really good mobility routine going on, nail that recovery, make yourself a really good meal, like all these different things that do support your training. You can still be channeling time into it if you have it. But again, eventually that's going to be used for the actual training stuff. So just hold back, have the courage to hold back. It's so hard to do. It's so much easier to train than it is to hold back, but have the courage to say, you know what, 3 miles is perfect. And that's all I'm going to do today. Okay, related to that, this is something that came up with a couple of athlete calls as everyone's just kind of in their first couple weeks and sorting everything out. I want to point out that the 5th leg of an Ironman or a 70.3 triathlon, we talk about swim, bike, run, and nutrition, but the 5th leg is logistics. And it is a lot to go from, hey, sort of off season, you're doing whatever you want, to, oh my gosh, I've got to have my whole week dialed. I've got to do meal prep. I've got a lot more laundry. I have to figure out my recovery. I have to figure out my transitions, not like the transition area, but like transitioning from your bed to the pool, to the gym, to work, and you need your work clothes and you forgot your towel and all these different things happen, and packing and all of that. So It's a lot. I will say it will get easier, but a couple tips to help you as you do that. Number one, we've talked about sit down on a Sunday, reverse plan your week and figure out what you need to do. Try to automate it. So you're like, hey, this is my swim bag. It lives in this place. All my stuff is always in it. I always have my suit, my cap, my goggles, whatever. That's ready to go. Have your bike stuff automated. Just all that startup is something that you can kind of work on the weekend. And I'd say too, boring and repeatable is your friend, even in terms of like meals. If you can just prep a bunch of stuff on a Sunday that you can eat throughout the week that you know is going to fulfill your calorie requirements and have certain snacks in your bag, stuff like that, it's all going to help you a lot. I'll add to this too, if you travel a lot, I have travel on my mind because I'm just getting back from some travel, but if you travel for work, think about travel friendly things. Like I literally will bring like a big bag of oats with me and peanut butter. And I'm like, you know what? No matter where I am, I can eat oats and peanut butter before my workout. And then I will figure out my meals the rest of the day. But I have that when I wake up at 4 a.m. because I'm in East Coast time and I've just landed and I have something to eat so I can go out. So just stuff like that is really, really helpful. And again, give yourself grace if some of the logistics means that you end up skipping some of the time. You have to cut your cool down short, whatever that is okay right now. It will get easier, but just don't underestimate how much time this is going to take kind of in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I love this whole thing, boring and repeatable. I feel like I sort of break down, like, especially like for runs or even for, I mean, not so much bikes now outside, but like for runs, like I have a boring, repeatable loop that I do. And hopefully everybody can find one around their neighborhood, even if it's just a 1 mile loop around their neighborhood. Like find the place that you can just walk out your door and like say, okay, I just shut my brain off. I can maybe put my earphones in even and just run this loop. And then maybe on the weekend I go off and do something else some other place. So yeah, no, great advice here. And yeah, I always think like my most important bag that I always pack before I travel is like my snack bag. I take a big Ziploc bag and throw my protein bars and my Nature Bakery. Shout out to Nature Bakery, big bars and all kinds of other stuff in there. But yeah, so good advice here.
One thing I'll add too, Jim, you've done this and then I sort of took this on, is having a different bag, like those LL Bean canvas totes for each sport. It's like, this is my winter run bag. It has my gloves, it has my hat, it has my vest, etc. This is my bike bag, whenever you can get outside. This is my swim bag. This is my ski bag. This is my hiking bag. And before you know it, just about sits by the door and you can get it and it's awesome. That's been really helpful for me. Of course, then when you travel somewhere, you're like, I can't bring 6 canvas tote bags on the plane. Like, what am I going to do with this? But for nomadic lifestyle at home, I would say that that's a really good hack. So everyone should consider getting your tote bags ready to go.
Yeah, I think I did the LL Bean bag as one of my gear picks of the week, but it's probably something I use the most because everything's modularized, right? So it's like whatever sport, I just grab the bag and out the door I go.
That is a bonus gear pick of the week for today. Okay, last thing here, and then we're going to hand it over to Jim. So I wanted to share some fun goals and intentions from an athlete who did a really great job at goal mapping. I said before, I'm never calling out one athlete, but this is just one athlete who I had a great conversation with. So this is also, I would say, continuing on our episode from 2 weeks ago where we talked about goals and intentions. But this athlete said some training goals were to train with friends at least once a week. I love that. I'm similarly trying to make sure that I get 1 or 2 social things in every week. Discover a new training food that I really love. I mean, hey, boring and repeatable is your friend, but get something new and make that your new boring and repeatable. So I love kind of the intention to try something different. Have fun when I train at least once per week. I actually responded and said, let's see if we can bring that up. Like, I want you to have fun when you train maybe 4 times a week or 6 times a week, because again, keep that recreational athletes. But I love that the intention is there because often we're not really thinking about fun when we're like, my goal is to break, 7 minutes in the mile and this and that. It's like, no, my goal is just to have fun. This athlete's doing an Ironman. So in terms of those Ironman goals, they said they want to run the last 6 miles of the marathon. This is huge. This is a goal that I recommend everyone kind of think about in terms of their Ironman. Their even bigger goal related to that was race the last 6 miles of the marathon. I love that. But then my favorite one was they said, have at least one moment where I say, holy cow, I'm having so much fun. So bring it back to fun. If you start your race with that intention, my hunch is that you're going to have a lot of those moments. But I love just calling it out in January, knowing that this race is in July and saying, I want to have that moment during the race. And then a couple process goals that I wanted to just share. They said, focus on fueling immediately after. Super, super smart. Again, you can be nailing your overall requirements for fuel, but if the timing's off, you are not going to feel that good in your workouts. This is a great one. No more than 24 hours between TrainingPeaks comments. We as coaches love that one because sometimes someone goes dark for a week and we're like, hello, is anyone in there? Everything okay? But just the intention to give those comments. And then finally, always, all caps, do a little warm up, even if it shortens the actual run. this is fantastic. We talked about warm-ups last week, things like RPR, things like a lunge matrix, glute activation, etc. I just thought these were fantastic goals and intentions. So kudos to this athlete and to all of our other athletes who are crushing their goals and goal mapping. And I think this is kind of the best way to achieve those goals and then have amazing races. So yeah, thanks so much to this athlete.
This is great. I was reading through this and I was like, I want to steal a couple of these, especially the food one. I think that's really
Mhm.
cool to find a new food. But then I got to the warm up one and I realized, oh my God, warm ups are my love language. I just like love this. This is the best because, like you say, we're always trying to throw stuff at you guys. Everybody should have their unique warm up for the swim and for the run and for the bike. And so we're just constantly experimenting with things here and find the warm ups that work for you. But and like you say, if you have to shorten your run, that's okay because that's how essential the warm up is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that was a lot of me talking. Jim, I'm going to hand over to you. What have you been learning in the first couple weeks back in the office?
Wow. Okay. So we covered some of mine as well too. We've covered the gentle January. The New Year's resolutions are great. So one thing. So a couple of things here. I have been focusing on a bit of breath work on the bike, but what I've been focusing on is breathing out like really deeply on the recovery part of the interval. And I think one thing I've just sort of discovered, I've always sort of been more of a shallow breather, and so I think it's a little bit harder for me. And I've been working on my breathing in running wise, but it's a little bit harder when I'm actively running. So it's actually easier for me to do it at rest. But I'm finding on the bike where I started from is when I'm in recovery, say a 1 minute on, 1 minute off. During that 1 minute, I'll play a little game. I'll say, okay, how big can I make my belly? How much can I flare my ribs out? Get the big breath in, and then I watch my heart rate, and I go, okay, let's play a little game here. I'm at this rate, heart rate. What can I get down to within this 1 minute of time? And I'm finding that that's a way for me to get more familiar, get in the habit, and just get that sort of physiological practice and physical practice of big breaths during the recovery time, and then move that into the actual interval where I'm breathing. And if you say, it's really interesting. If you watch like the Tour de France riders and you see them in action and you think, oh my God, these guys are really big. They're like big guys. And then they get the bike and they're all like fairly small folks, but they just have these abilities, really big ability to really expand out their lungs and their belly. And so I always think about those guys as my inspiration. And I think actually looking back, probably the best amateur triathlete I ever knew, he used to do this little trick at Masters sometimes. I don't know why, but he could get his belly to be like almost like he looked like he was 8 months pregnant. And I was like, wow, that's such a cool trick that he's doing, the party trick. And now what I realize what he's doing is that he's just dropping his diaphragm and expanding out his lungs. I was like, this guy had a massive VO2 and he's had the massive ability to use it because he could actually access it with full deep breaths and pushing his belly out. So anyway, I'm working on big belly breathing on my recovery intervals.
Wait, I love this because I think it's actually very related to another insight that I love that you dropped in later on kind of invoking your parasympathetic nervous system. So, this might be, again, a little more theory than fact. I don't know the science behind this, but I know that often in meditation, you're cued to take like a short inhale. Sometimes you can even top off with another inhale breath and then a big, deep exhale. And it sounds like this is exactly what this is. So, I'm curious if you're actually sort of invoking the parasympathetic state while you're in your workout, or at very least kind of trying to take the stress down a little bit, which is bringing your heart rate down, because at least that's what you're trying to do with meditation. And so I'm going to jump right to what I was going to say to your parasympathetic point, which is I've been using this new meditation app called Insight Timer, and it's really good. There's a lot of apps out there, but I like this better than like Headspace or other ones. And I did this whole breathing thing recently where it was all about like the short inhale and the big exhale. So this is just super aligned. I love that you brought that up.
Well, that brings me to another point, which was that I heard somebody say the other day, like, the parasympathetic. When we say parasympathetic, that's the rest and digest. So just basically the uncranked, unanxious person, essentially, right? The relaxed state. And I heard somebody say the other day, like, the parasympathetic should be your default mode. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, is that my default mode? And I thought, okay, well, I'm always thinking about like, at night, I want to wind down, I want to go to sleep. And, after workouts, I'm thinking about this. And then realized, I don't think I'm thinking about this as a regular state, just during the day. And so my point was like just to be more aware of that and sort of ask myself that question on a regular basis throughout the day. Like, am I in this parasympathetic, this rest and digest, or I'm in this sympathetic, which is kind of like cranked up? They call it the flight or freeze, and I feel like that doesn't really cover modern day. I just think of it more of like anxiety. Is how does my stomach feel? Oh, I'm a little bit churning away. My head's kind of buzzing a little bit. Okay, that's the sympathetic state. So On this podcast, we've talked a lot about, meditation, breath work. One of my favorite new things now is the massage gun, just like and using that for all over and sort of combining that with RPR. So there's lots of tools out there. Foam rolling, another great one as well too. So again, I think it's maybe my challenge of the year is just is to keep asking myself that question.
I love that. Yeah, for me, I find that I can get to the parasympathetic state during the day if I lay down, but I have to like actually lay down and chill out. And sometimes I'm like, well, of course I'm in the parasympathetic state. I'm sitting on my computer working, but it turns out that my shoulders are hunched up to my ears and my whole body's vibrating. It's like that's not actually the parasympathetic state. So consider a lay down. And one more hack on that is schedule it in your calendar. I'm big about calendar stuff, especially as things have been getting busier.
Yep.
So I've tried to say like, okay, can I find a 20-minute window where I can just lay down? I'm not even sleeping. I'm just breathing for a little while. Of course, that's like a luxury. You know, we have really, really busy lives and busy schedules, but I do think everybody can find 15 to 20 minutes here and there, especially if you're just feeling extra cranked up. And again, if that means you take 15 minutes off your Zwift, great. That's totally fine. It's going to serve you better kind of down the line.
Right. Or like sometimes I find like in the car too as well. Like I'm in the car, I don't put any music on. And it's like, okay, let me just breathe a little bit. I'm going to the store. It's gonna be 10 minutes away. Like let's just take a little bit of downtime here for a moment. It's just good ride in silence and do a little breathing. So yeah, lots of little places here to do that and to get into there. Um, my next point here is that I just realized the day. So as coaches, we get these notifications when our athletes complete a workout. And I realized the day when I opened up my notifications, there's so many notifications for strength workouts. And I know we talk about strength a lot on this podcast. And I want to say that we should take the credit for all this, but I just think in general, like strength work with endurance athletes it's out there and it's in the air and people have grabbed onto it. I think they've been influenced a little bit by us, but mostly just influenced by the sort of the culture of it. And I think finally, there's for a long time, when I first come into the sport, people say, oh, you shouldn't do any strength training. Or the question becomes, should you do any strength training if you're an endurance athlete? Like that, those were like legit articles. And you still saw those articles up until just fairly recently. And now all you see in all these peer articles or online or wherever, you just see, strength work. We talk about it all the time. So anyway, just shout out to everybody out there who is pumping iron, doing some level of strength work. I feel like it's double the amount of athletes. And now it's very uncommon for me to find an athlete who doesn't do any kind of strength work.
Yep. No, totally. I feel exactly the same way. I feel like it's Gentle January and Gym January. GYM. Maybe it's JIM January too. Coach Gym January. But yeah, I've been loving seeing that in all my athletes, and we're seeing it matter for endurance. So I can't sing the praises of that highly enough.
Yeah, I think we're going to see faster people. We're going to see people who are less injury prone this year. So the payoff it's funny because you don't know what the payoff is, and is this one of those things you trust? But yeah, it's going to pay off for everybody. So one of my other points is that I was talking to an athlete and they said they were listening to our podcast. And I think we had a podcast, I don't know, you probably know the episode one, where we talk a lot about the why of why are you doing this? And I think probably as we always do, we sort of delve deep into the whys and goal mapping. But this athlete said to me, he goes, I don't really have a why. But then he just got done telling me that he wanted to be better this year at Ironman than he did last time. And he liked to set goals and he liked to challenge himself. And I said, wait a minute, hold on. Like you just gave me a great why. Like that's a perfectly great why. That's a very simple and straightforward why. I want to be better than I was last year. I thought, that's great because, challenge and evolution and transformation, it just takes many shapes and sizes. And it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I'm going to climb all the 8,000 meter peaks in Nepal next year or something, right? And it's going to be a movie. It's like, no. Your why can just be like, I want to be just a little bit better than I was last year.
Yeah, totally agree with this. I have almost no notes on this other than to say that if you go through this exercise and you're finding a very externally driven why, that's a good reason not to do something. But anything that's internal, that's just like, I just feel like doing it. I feel like it would be fun. I feel like it would be a cool thing to do. Like, that's great. Do it. That's awesome. That's joy. And often I think maybe we don't put the value word on top of this why reason, but just like you said, it can be challenge, it can be evolution, it can be transformation, it can be joy, it can be fun, it can be creativity, etc. So don't worry too much about getting bogged down in like those big flashy terms. If it's an internal reason, it probably is completely fine in terms of values alignment.
Yep. I learned something this week. It's about lactate and ghrelin. And so ghrelin is, you probably know about this, mine do, Katie, is ghrelin is the hunger hormone. And so if you ever wondered why you're not hungry sometimes after a hard workout, I learned that the greater blood lactate accumulation is associated with greater suppression of the hunger hormone ghrelin and subjective appetite, which means like you just don't feel hungry sometimes, like after a big workout. I'm always wondering, like, man, I just went out and crushed it and a really hard workout, long where I come home, like, not that hungry. And you have to eat, and we do eat, but you're like, I don't like I'm not diving into the fridge. And this is the reason why. So there's an actual physiological reason why that we are not feeling hungry at that moment.
This is really interesting, and this is actually related to, I guess, maybe more last season than this season because we're just getting started. But last season, I remember many athletes reporting to me that they were like so hungry on their off day, sometimes on a Monday. And the reason that that would happen is because that's actually when your body's finally feeling how much burn it's been doing the whole weekend long. So that's just a reminder that on your off day, that's not really a cue to eat less if you're training less. In fact, failing to restock those energy stores is a really good one-way ticket to low energy availability, which we're all trying to avoid. So I often think about that off day or any lower training day where you are feeling the hunger to really top off those energy stores. Like go get the Ben Jerry's, do everything you can because it is really hard to break even on big training days. Number one, because of this ghrelin effect, but also just because you have such big output. So now is a great time to just really try and dial your fueling strategy, but also use kind of your intellectual mind to say like, hey, I know I should be hungry right now, eat like right after your workout, no matter what. And I'll say something that's helpful for me, and I'm doing really big workouts, is like doing smoothies because you can just pack so much stuff in there post workout. Like if you throw in like peanut butter, almond butter, protein powder, all these different things, you can end up with like a good calorie bomb that you need right after your workout, but it just feels like kind of rehydrating. So I would say that's easier than sometimes eating like the biggest sandwich of your life right after a workout if you need to get the calories in.
Yep. I've actually done something. I'm actually doing a little something new now for my longer workouts is that I'm actually doubling up what food that I eat beforehand. And sometimes like, oh, I'll go out, like I've got a ride and I'll do this and I'll grab that. And really I'm going like, what if I just doubled exactly what I just grabbed and just went for it? And so I'm gonna try this out this year and to see if like can I double like my intake right beforehand and then really keep at it. And then I'm super psyched to keep at it during the actual longer stuff as well too. But I think it's gonna make a big difference.
I love it. Well, that's too. While like maybe you aren't feeling the suppression, you're just sort of at baseline. So why not like pack it in whenever you can? Timing is of course important, but any time is better than no time. So yeah, definitely fueling before, during, and after is huge.
Yep, I always say bring snacks, and I'm gonna say double snacks. That's what
Bring double snacks. Yep.
right, exactly right.
Why would you have one fig bar when you can have two fig bars?
Well, that's it because one is none and two is one.
Exactly. That's one of our biggest principles. We should have put that in our coaching philosophy episode last week.
That's right. If you have one set of super shoes, you buy two set of super shoes.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
I'm trying to do that same philosophy with bikes. If I have one Cervelo R5, I need two Cervelo R5s.
You're gonna need a whole lot more clients if you want to make that sustainable.
Exactly right. Yes, yes, please. Okay. When it's cold or time is limited, break up your bigger workout with an exercise snacks plus a main workout combo on back-to-back days. So this is what I did recently. I wanted to go for a longer run. And again, it's been super cold out. So I was in town here in Hanover and I realized, okay, I have a little bit of time after my appointment. So I came with my I wore my running stuff to my appointment. And then I went out to my just very easy running loop, which is the Ockham loop, which is a 1 mile loop. It gets very low friction and there's always people there and there's like people walking and it's well lit. And I was like, okay, this is the perfect place for me to do a low friction, super cold, like 30-minute run. And I literally went out there and I was like, okay, I'm going to run for 30 minutes and I'm going to try to not sweat. And I'm just going to get my 3 in because tomorrow then I'll get up and I had a running with a friend at 10 o'clock next morning and do a 5 mile loop. And so I basically got 8 miles in within like a 17-hour period. And as opposed to like getting in like say an 8 mile run over like 48 hours. And I thought, okay, this math, I'm not good with math, but I just realized this kind of checks a lot of boxes. I got the distance in and I got the stimulation 2 days in a row as opposed to one big day. And it just really fit really well, especially with this time of year when it's been too cold and I don't really I'm prepared. And I don't think I'm really able to actually go out and spend an hour and a half running outside.
Yeah, and I think this is good advice, not even just for the cold, but also for if you're, say, like an injury-prone runner. I do think that spreading something out over a couple days where you can get really good recovery in between in terms of rolling, in terms of stretching, etc., can be better than just kind of pounding those really, really long sets and mileage and stuff. So think about using this creatively, whether it's for a scheduling reason, for an injury reason, or for a cold reason. Exercise snacks are great. And again, back to the principle of gentle January, base January, gym January, etc. This is all just about stacking little bricks or big bricks bricks, and it doesn't really matter how you distribute those bricks. I mean, I probably wouldn't say do like 8 workouts a day that are all 10 minutes, but if that's what works for you, like, hey, you're stacking the bricks.
Let's try it. Let's go. We're all an experiment. End of one. My last one is, I think some folks have heard about, a lot of folks have heard about Zwift, of course, but now there's a new player and it's called TrainingPeaks Virtual. And some of you have heard about this or not, but if you are a TrainingPeaks premium client, TrainingPeaks Virtual is essentially their version of Zwift. I believe the developer used to work for Zwift. And so there's, at this point, like, you can switch over to TrainingPeaks Virtual. You can download it right from TrainingPeaks itself. So I've been playing around a little bit with it because a couple of things. When I had a little epic with Zwift where I couldn't, all of my equipment has always worked well with Zwift. And for some reason, something changed. And I spent 3 weeks trying to get my bikes and my power meters and my trainer to talk to Zwift, and I couldn't, it wasn't successful at all. I don't mean to speak ill of Zwift because I really appreciate what Zwift has done over the years, and I think they've been a positive change, but their customer service was tough. The first line of defense was they give you to a Zwift ambassador, or I just believe is just a power user of Zwift, and it's not their actual customer support. And so it took a bunch of weeks to sort of talk to actually even somebody. And by the time I actually got to a Zwift representative, a customer representative, I was just done with the whole thing. So I switched over to TrainingPeaks Virtual. It finally connected up with actually Bluetooth, not AT, with TrainingPeaks Virtual. I'm always trashing Bluetooth, but that's my setup now. So anyway, I've been using TrainingPeaks Virtual. I'm not an expert at it yet, but I encourage you, if you want to save a little bit of money and you want it to integrate really well with TrainingPeaks, which, so if you're doing a bike workout on Wednesday and if it's loaded in Wednesday, when you open up TrainingPeaks Virtual, it just pops up and you just hit go button. So it reads your TrainingPeaks really well and it puts data right in there. And then I just think in general, like, the experience is basically the same. It's managing your resistance on your trainer based upon your FTP, but their default is, I think it's a little bit easier to see in terms of, like, the data is, I think, clearer. And a few things that I really appreciate, like, I have left and right power meter. They show the power balance as a default, which is great. Just so many little things that are just designed to really work within the TrainingPeaks world. It's less gamified. You don't have to earn your gear. You can just pick your gear. Matter of fact, we could actually create a custom kit if we wanted to for Endurance Drive. If I was smart enough, I would do that, but I'm not. But yeah, less gamification, really no levels. I think the graphics are a little bit easier. There's less routes, but there's plenty of routes right now, and I'm sure they'll improve that as well. The other thing too is when I downloaded TrainingPeaks Virtual and I was so frustrated with Zwift, actually TrainingPeaks sent me an email right away and said, "Hey, thanks for downloading our product. And here's an email to a person to give you feedback." I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." So this is the exact opposite experience. And just, I guess, obviously they're trying to poach, Zwift users, but they've got this huge built-in clientele with TrainingPeaks already. So anyway, check it out. I think Zwift is now, it's about a $20 a month membership maybe. So if, again, most of our people who are listening to us probably are TrainingPeaks premium users already. You can just switch over, and we've done the hard work, thanks to Teddy, one of our athletes, to convert our Zwift files into TrainingPeaks files. So now I can just load TrainingPeaks Virtual files into people's calendars. And I think at this point, I've almost got, I wouldn't say half of my athletes have already switched over in the first month, but a number of people have already switched over already. So big shout out to TrainingPeaks Virtual. I think TrainingPeaks in general, it's a good platform, but I wouldn't say it's always, their platform sort of stays stable, if you will. Not a lot of updates, but I think this is a big win for those guys.
Wow, well, I have not tried this yet, and something you and many people know about me is that I don't really like change, and I'm used to Zwift and everything, and I've been building up my levels for my entire life, but I totally see the advantage here, especially with how difficult it is to sort custom workouts now in Zwift, given how big our library is that we use. So I would say any of my athletes, definitely reach out to me. We can troubleshoot this. We can hop on TrainingPeaks Virtual. I will make it a challenge of the week for me to give it a try in the next couple of weeks, see how it goes. But yeah, glad that there's an alternative, because in the past there really hasn't been a very good one, and it's nice to see that the market's expanding a little bit, and that there's real people. That's always great. Like, that elevates a product very quickly if you can just speak to a person. All right, I think we made it through a whole lot of insights. Once again, we can very easily fill an episode with just random things that happen with our athletes. But let's answer a listener question that I alluded to, foreshadowing in the podcast earlier on. How do I remember my swim workout? So one hack that we use within our triathlon team is we will write it down or print it on literally a piece of paper. dip that piece of paper in the water, get it wet, and you can stick that piece of paper to a kickboard or a water bottle or the pool deck. It will just sit right there and then you can see it. This is something that we do pretty much every week. And then a really fun thing that you can do is afterwards you can ball it up and you can throw it and you can try to make a basket in the trash can, which Jim does every week at Dartmouth Try Swim practice. So it's a win-win. You have your workout and then you get a little bit of baseball practice too.
Exactly right. Yes, my favorite part of the workout. Yes. And the other the trick that our friend Noah taught me, again, he taught me a lot about technology this week, was you can screenshot your swim workout in Training Peaks and make it as your phone background. And I don't like to have my phone near the pool because I would drop it in there. And supposedly iPhones are waterproof, but I'm sure I'd drop it in. But anyway, for somebody who's competent, you could do that as well too.
Love it. Sweet. Okay, we are jumping to challenge of the week. I am going to suggest a process for adopting many different challenges, which is habit stacking. So if you want to introduce a new habit, it can be really effective to bundle it with something that you already do. So I'm going to give a couple of examples for stuff that I've done recently or that my athletes have done. I've had a little bit of like a tight Achilles situation going on. So I am stretching my calves when I brush my teeth. I get my little electric toothbrush, there's a timer going, and I just stretch my calves the entire time. You could also stretch your calves when you're waiting for your coffee or something like that. So just a quick thing that's always happening that you need to start a new habit that's going to take you about a minute. Perfect. This is one that a couple athletes have come up with, is doing your training piece comments while you're cooling down on the trainer, for example, or while you're stretching after a run. It's like just do it immediately because you're already going to be doing those post-run things and then you won't forget your comments. And then if you're really bad at fueling after a workout, bring your protein shake in the shower. You're going to be taking a shower no matter what. And then you're bundling the fueling with the getting clean. So lots of different ways to do that. But if you're having trouble adopting a new habit, just make it a buddy with something else that you already do.
So I don't know if you know this about me, but at one point, for some reason, when I think probably back on my big, Tim Ferriss listening phase, all these habits. And I actually at one point registered a domain called stackyourlife.com. And I actually had an email. I was reminded of this today because I think something happened with my Gmail. I had stackyourlife@gmail.com. And I don't know, I got this message recently from Gmail saying somebody hacked into it or something. I was like, I don't know. I had this years ago. But this idea, again, yeah, like we are doing these things. Like multitasking is, that's a farce. Like you shouldn't multitask. But I think this idea of like, what are the things that you're doing in your life that you can say, oh, just it's automatic. Like it's like, oh, I'm making coffee and I'm also stretching at the same time. There's all kinds of things that we do throughout the day that I'm finding for myself now. Like take my vitamins, for example. Like now I pretend like with a coffee, when I have my coffee in the morning, I have to have my vitamins in the morning. Like, and I started thinking about all these things recently about like, what can I stack just to make, again, friction-free environment to get these things done that I should be doing.
And one that I'll add to that is like set a timer too. If it's like, oh, you have to do vitamins or you have to do like even your stretches. Or for me as a coach, it's like if I don't do 2 rounds of Training Peak comments every day, I have 75 notifications the next day. So it's like I will do them at this time in the morning and this time in the evening if I can. And then there's a lot of ways to do it. But this is hopefully helpful for a lot of our challenges of the week, kind of in the past and going forward. If you're having trouble adding it in, just make it as automatic as possible.
My challenge of the week is to, if you have a massage gun, use your massage gun to do some sort of the RPR, and you looked that up from a couple of episodes ago, RPR exercises, and again, sort of to invoke your parasympathetic nervous state. So.
Love it. Fantastic. So I'm going to propose a new bonus segment. I think someone asked us about this a long time ago. A listener said, hey, could you give us like a movie or a book, TV show, podcast, music, some type of recommendation, which I think makes sense to do right now because we are all trying to entertain ourselves on the trainer. So we're going to go over what we've been kind of doing to entertain ourselves. And I've been watching a new show. Again, this has basically nothing to do with endurance, but there's this show called Happy Valley, which is sort of like a British crime drama. If you've seen Broadchurch, it's a little bit like that. It is one of the best shows I've ever seen before. And I think it came out like maybe in the like 2015 space sometime around then. But I found it because Connor and I were looking for a new show to watch. And we actually used ChatGPT by filling in like, hey, these are all the shows that we've loved recently. And it sped out all these shows and this one came up. So we started watching it in the fall, like sort of in the evening together. But the first season is really intense. And it was intense to the point that I was like having some trouble sleeping because it would amp me up so much. So then Connor said it's not a bedtime show anymore, but it's a trainer show. So I've been watching this show on the trainer. I cannot sing its praises highly enough. It's so good. Check it out. You can get it through Amazon Prime. You do have to buy the seasons. They're like $9 for the season. It's not on any like streaming services other than I think like some BBC related ones, but it's been great. So highly recommend if you like British crime dramas that are dark and kind of intense, but also kind of funny.
I love British TV in general. So thank you. This is a great recommendation. I'm gonna check this one out. And speaking of British, so British actor Eddie something or other. He's in the new thing called Jackal, which is on Peacock, and it's I think he's a hired assassin. But anyway, high production values, quite an interesting story. He's obviously a great actor. You guys have all seen him in really big movies, so it's kind of fun to see when you see a big movie actor coming and doing a series, a TV series. So that's my latest. That and Dune Supremacy, which has also been run, that's on HBO. So yeah, lots of stuff to watch, and of course football playoff season as well.
Of course, of course. Not really for me because I'm watching Happy Valley, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. All right, let's finish it up. Gear pick of the week. So I have a good one this week because I'm just coming off travel. I, for the first time ever, tried wearing compression socks on the plane because I think I'd gone for a run before both of my flights, and I was like, oh, I'm going to feel terrible when I get off the plane. I got some cheap ones on Amazon. I think they helped. Maybe it's placebo, but my legs felt pretty good. And it's like, you kind of get that like swollen feeling in your legs sometimes after a really long flight. I didn't really feel that. So if you might not even be traveling, but if you have like long periods of standing or sitting after long or hard workouts, you can check this out. Let us know if they work. I think there's some science there, but I'm not sure. And if nothing else, the placebo effect worked for me and made my travels a little bit smoother. So check them out.
Yeah, I love the compression sock thing, good for recovery, and just I love the way if they kind of squeeze your feet a little bit. So
It's like a
yeah, I
hug,
think they're great.
hug for your
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah, exactly right. Mine this week is actually in full transparency. So I have a massage gun. I have a Hyper Ice. I have one of the earlier versions ones, and I wanted to get one that was a little bit lighter, and so I ordered a Hyper Ice Go 2, and then when I realized that they're now like $100. So I think basically now it's one of these things like I thought they were like $400, $500, and I hadn't looked at them. And they're sold out right now on their website and on Amazon. They'll be shipping in late January. But anyway, like $120. I think it weighs like a pound and a half, so it's really lightweight. It's really portable for travel, and also I think you don't need a whole bunch of like. I think it's like a 40 watt is the motor, and that's kind of I always use the lowest setting on mine anyway, so I think it's gonna be fine. So anyway, but just something that I think like I've been using it so much that again, two is one, right?
Yeah. You
Yeah.
can be the guy in the airport that has the compression socks and the massage gun is like laying on the ground doing a spinal twist in the middle of the airport. And
And
people,
it finishes
uh,
metal around my neck.
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Multiple metals. They're clanking around, like touching each other. And you're just waiting for someone to ask you, like, are you a triathlete? Do you do
Yeah,
triathlon?
and then right, and then I'm gonna bite it. I'm gonna pretend bite it. Yeah, for
Yeah.
and take
Yeah.
selfies when you biting it. Yeah, right.
Yep.
I don't know why people do that. That looks it feels so awful, but that's like a
I
thing,
know.
I guess.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Anyway, well, this was a joy as always. Hopefully people appreciate those insights. Again, we're not calling anyone out. We love our athletes. We've been loving the energy. We've been loving the questions, and we will just keep this energy going kind of for the next couple months. So if you're a new athlete and you're listening, please consider dropping us a rating or a review or sharing the podcast with somebody that you know. That really helps us grow. Or you can also send us feedback. So we have a feedback form that is linked in our show notes. We have extended show notes. We have a lot for you. So please check it out. Please keep listening. And yeah, thanks so much to everyone.
Yep. Thanks, peeps.